So welcome to the start of the arrival story to Highclere Castle. And behind me is London Lodge, because it lies in the direction of London. There's another lodge called Winchester Lodge because it goes towards Winchester to the south of us. And this was created in 1793 by Geordie's ancestor, who was the first Earl of Carnarvon. He'd been recently ennobled by King George III, and he was celebrating the fact that he was now an Earl. So he thought he'd have a new gateway entrance to his spectacular park, which was created by Capability Brown. So he was sort of creating a sense of grandeur and that wonderful anticipation of arriving at his home. The first stage was through this lodge. It was completely dilapidated and broken when I had first met Geordie. So we have restored it over years. It was covered in laurels and rhododendrons. And in fact, I didn't even know there was a wing either side of it. It was that bad. The water just poured in the top. It was a work of some years to restore it and no little money. And then what we decided to do was create a short-term let here, holiday let. And in the one side is a kitchen, a sitting room and a little loo, and the other side a bedroom and a bathroom. So you do have to walk out of one door and into the other, but it works, and there's paving stones. And I hope for the people who come and spend a couple of days here, it's great time out. It's got a beautiful walk from here to the Temple of Diana, wonderful trees, and there's nothing scheduled you have to do, apart from perhaps visit the castle for a tour and have some afternoon tea. So today many of our visitors leave by this entrance, but in the time of, for example, Benjamin Disraeli and Salisbury, Lord Salisbury, arriving here in Victorian times, this is where they'd have trotted in their horse and carriages, arriving and turning and winding through the rhododendrons and between the trees before passing the Temple of Diana and then carrying on towards the castle. So the entrance story to a gentleman's residence and the arrival story is every bit as important as the actual house. It's the anticipation and the excitement, and you're building up to where you're going to be greeted by your host. And then you'd be suitably impressed by the grandeur of the park surrounding his house. They set great store by nature and the trees they planted. They thought it very important and very conducive to peace of mind, and they were always going for walks. I think we're remembering once more to always go for walks. Anyway, it is a joy to once more arrive at this point through London Lodge and find your way to the Temple of Diana, first of all. Welcome to the Temple of Diana, part of the arrival story to Highclere Castle. It is utterly glorious up here, and I'm looking down on the lake to one side, and back in the distance over there is the top silhouette of the castle. And on a day like this, I think there's nowhere better to be, and I think I'm dreaming of a picnic up here in the summer. So why is it called the Temple of Diana? It's named for the Roman god. She's associated with the woodland, which is just behind me, and with the lake. She was the goddess of hunting. And this is really the main focus on the arrival story, as in the olden days, you might have arrived by carriage and horses, trotting through London Lodge in between the rhododendron bushes, and then winding your way through this Capability Brown park landscape, always wondering, where's the castle? Am I nearly there? Well, the answer is you're not, actually. It's about a mile still to the castle from here. And it's all about the anticipation and the angles and that sense of eagerly awaited excitement when you eventually do see the castle. This temple was actually first created in the 18th century. They were very keen on temples because they grew faster than trees, which I'd completely concur with. You've got something there to look at for all your efforts straight away. But it was redesigned by Charles Barry when he'd been commissioned by the third Earl of Carnarvon to clad the Georgian house, Highclere House, and create the castle today. So this was his kind of testing commission, if you like. And I think he made it taller and bigger and higher and more grand because he was going to create a much grander house. I think there are 15 of these Corinthian pillars marching round this central circular building here, which is supported by some brickwork, and then I can see the render all above here needs ever more work. I suspect it looked immaculate for the first 100 years, and Geordie and I always seem to be repairing it. But it's a labour of love and very happy to carry on. It would be amazing to repair the inside as well, but that may not be possible to do in our lifetime. But at least we can make the outside secure. And my husband's done a lot of work on the dome above me here. And he's clambered up inside to see what was happening when it was scaffolded and replaced all the different urns. So that, in a sense, reflects what you'd have first trotted through, London Lodge, with the work of Eleanor Code, an extraordinary entrepreneurial lady of the 18th century, with great big stone look-alike urns and decorations, trotting through there, wondering and admiring this extraordinary parkland before you actually arrived at the front door of the castle. Amazing. We are so lucky to be able to touch and see these visible records and stories from our ancestors. It's so much easier to imagine yourself walking in history and time when you've got something here to touch and feel. I can see there's a little mark here, and from the old photographs there was once an iron fence all the way round here, which would have definitely been a bit safer. And whereas we've just painted windows on here, they would once have been proper windows. And I've even got a photograph of a horse tethered round the corner here. So maybe this is soon going to be Highclere team picnic spot when the weather's a little bit better. It is a joy, and I never tire of being up here. Maybe I can practice my running skills all around the outside of this and double count the number of pillars. We've made our way from London Lodge, past the Temple of Diana, and eventually, following the winding road round, we've now made it to the crossroads in the middle part of the park. And after this, you're going to make your way up the main drive, again just catching a little bit of sight of the turrets of the castle, but never the whole building. You're not quite there yet. And of course, behind me, there's another drive through which most visitors enter today. But still, at this point, you can't quite see where you're going. Very good metaphor for life. But these crossroads are also quite interesting because to one side, there's a cedar of Lebanon, a magnificent tree, one of the ones planted by Capelity Brown from the date 1771 in the next 10 years. So this is now a majestic spreading cedar tree, really announcing the grandeur of your arrival. And they dot the main drive. It's not an avenue, but they're mixed in amongst some oak trees. So we again follow the same process of planting the odd cedar tree or an oak tree as each fall down, and we try to make the best of it. And then behind me is a sequoia. Now this sequoia was planted by the 4th Earl in Victorian times, and there's quite a fun story about the sequoias. They were brought back to this tree from their native California, a wonder of the world. And they came back here and were registered at the RHS and Kew, and they wanted to call them Wellingtonias after the Duke of Wellington, Sequoia Wellingtonia. But in America, they were rather keen to call it Washingtonia after George Washington. But the English kind of got there first, so the whole thing was a bit of a debate. And in the end, they tend to be called Sequoia sempervirens and gigantica, rather than named for one or the other great men of that particular century. It's doing pretty well. It's planted, I reckon, about 1860. So I suppose in another 500 years' time, it might look simply magnificent as they do in California today. So there's a story to every tree, isn't there? And their lifespan long outlasts any of ours. We're so short term. They think for the long term. They're another good metaphor for life. So I'm going to head towards the castle here, and I hope at one point some of you might come and visit us with Viking.